This intense helmet camera footage captures a well-conducted surprise ambush by Myanmar rebel forces on members of the military junta from close range. As we can already see, the ambush was initiated from the bed of a cargo truck packed with rebel fighters that drove straight towards junta personnel. After overwhelming the junta forces with a high volume of fire, the rebels jumped from the truck and launched an assault on the surviving personnel. During the assault, the truck was temporarily used as mobile cover while turning around to prepare for a rapid exfiltration once the ambush had been completed. Meanwhile, the rebels dispersed throughout the area to encircle the remaining junta personnel. Overwhelmed by the speed of the assault and the rebels' superior firepower, the junta forces were unable to offer any visible resistance. The men conducting this ambush are members of the Myanmar Paladin Force 2-1 group, which is part of the Northern Confederate Group. This is an alliance of anti-junta resistance organizations that coordinate operations against Myanmar's military government in northern Myanmar. The targets of the attack were members of the so-called Pusau Thai militias. These are pro-junta militia groups in Myanmar that support the military government and operate at the village and township level. While the ambush began in a deliberate manner, it was still quite chaotic. Nevertheless, the men conducting it can be credited with a certain degree of tactical awareness, as demonstrated by this flanking maneuver through the store against a remaining junta fighter who never saw it coming. Please understand that the full aftermath of this ambush, as well as the complete raw version of this footage, can only be shown on Telegram. You can find the link in the description. Overall, 4 men were neutralized in the attack, and 3 weapons were reportedly seized. The speed and determination with which the operation was carried out, as well as the coordinated exfiltration using the truck, reinforced the assessment that this was a deliberate and well-planned attack. It is therefore likely that a certain degree of prior reconnaissance was conducted regarding both the targets and the exfiltration route before the ambush was launched. The use of cargo trucks for infiltration and exfiltration purposes, as well as serving as a base of fire and mobile cover, appears to be part of this group's modus operandi, as you will see shortly. This footage, captured by the same helmet camera in September 2025 during a deliberate attack on a junta police station, also demonstrates the same vehicle-mounted approach used in the previous ambush. The attack is initiated with a burst of fire from the bed of the truck, which neutralizes 2 guards at the gate. This is followed by the rapid dismount of the entire assault force, which immediately transitions into the attack with speed and aggression to capitalize further on the surprise effect. In the background, a second truck can be seen unloading another group of fighters, who immediately begin their assault from a position further to the rear. Although the station showed a certain level of defensive preparation, it was not particularly well secured overall. Furthermore, it is notable that, as with the previous engagement, there was little to no visible resistance from the junta police personnel. While this can partly be attributed to the element of surprise, it also appears to reflect a broader lack of morale among the defenders. As a result, the attackers had little difficulty breaching into the station and found the main gate wide open after neutralizing the guards. Even after the rebels bunched up in front of the gate, creating a bottleneck before entering the station grounds, there was no visible attempt by the defenders to exploit this vulnerability or engage the attackers with fire. The station personnel appeared to have simply remained hidden inside their huts. As will soon become apparent, some of their family members also seem to have been housed on the station grounds. However, what follows can only be shown on Telegram. The lack of resistance from the junta personnel, who appeared to be hiding in a state of shock, allowed the attackers to rapidly deploy across the compound and continue delivering fire across the objective area. As can be seen from the footage and the station's convoluted layout, the compound offered more depth than might have been apparent at first glance. On the one hand, this allowed the attackers to use the available space to infiltrate deeper into the station and establish themselves within the compound. On the other hand, it also meant that a determined defender could potentially be waiting around any corner. Likewise, the mixture of sheet metal and wooden structures provided little in the way of hard cover. Taken together, these factors required the attackers to proceed with a certain degree of caution despite the apparent lack of organized resistance. Therefore, a significant amount of pre-firing was used to suppress and pin down any potential defenders inside their huts while the attackers advanced under the cover of fire. If you've watched this far, I want to say thank you. Please make sure to like this video and leave a comment to help support the channel and boost it in the YouTube algorithm. Making use of the principle of fire and movement, the fighters continued to push deeper into the station. In doing so, they displayed an alternating pattern of dispersion and consolidation as they advanced through the compound. While the equipment and uniforms of the fighters appear mixed and improvised, I still have to credit them with a somewhat professional approach, especially when compared to what we have seen from their opponents throughout this video so far. Due to the often dense vegetation and the rural nature of many conflict hotspots in Myanmar, combat is primarily conducted by light infantry in the form of skirmishes, ambushes, raids, and assaults. Drones have also long since found their way onto the battlefield, particularly small commercial quadcopters used for reconnaissance, grenade drops, and FPV kamikaze attacks. However, their use is nowhere near as widespread as it is in Ukraine, which still allows for prolonged engagements between infantry forces in the open, such as the one seen here. These images once again illustrate the low morale among the station personnel, many of whom surrendered to the rebels without putting up a fight. These three able-bodied men in civilian clothing, for example, surrendered without resistance. As the video continues, we will see additional individuals who also surrendered and were subsequently escorted off the compound by the rebels. As mentioned earlier, junta personnel in rural areas often operate in civilian clothing, making it difficult to determine with certainty whether all of those detained were police officers or members of local militia groups. However, the rebels did recover a number of weapons from the compound during the operation, as will become apparent later in the footage. During mid-2025, there was a sharp increase in the seizure of police stations and militia outposts across Sagaing region and neighboring Chin state by rebel forces. These outposts serve not only as security positions but also as local administrative hubs through which the junta projects authority into rural areas, collects intelligence, and maintains contact with pro-government militias. Capturing or destroying them deprives the military government of much of its local presence and allows resistance groups to expand their safe haven areas, improve freedom of movement, and establish more secure logistical networks. This, in turn, enabled rebel forces to consolidate control over large swaths of rural territory in northwestern Myanmar, forcing junta units into increasingly defensive postures around key towns, transportation nodes, and major supply routes. Rather than attempting to hold every village and outpost, the junta has increasingly concentrated its forces around strategically important population centers, leaving many rural areas contested or under varying degrees of resistance influence. Zikon, a town southwest of Moniwal where this raid assault took place, sits along a strategic corridor linking Sagaing region with Magway region. Control over settlements and transport routes in this area is important for both sides, as they facilitate the movement of personnel, supplies, and information across a large portion of central Myanmar. The operation documented here is consistent with a distributed insurgency model, in which small, locally organized units conduct independent or loosely coordinated raids, ambushes, and assaults rather than large-scale conventional offensives. Such operations are designed to gradually erode the junta's ability to govern and secure rural areas while avoiding the heavy losses that would likely result from direct confrontations with larger military formations. Over time, the cumulative effect of these attacks can force government forces to disperse, stretch limited resources, and devote increasing manpower to static defense duties instead of offensive operations. Overall, the rebels appear to have treated the women and children, as well as the men who surrendered or were otherwise considered non-combatants, in a proper manner. Their behavior toward them does not appear to be aggressive in any way. Nothing definitive can be said about the affiliation of every individual seen in the footage, however. It is possible that some of them were supporters of the resistance or even individuals being held at the station by pro-junta forces, but the available footage does not allow for any firm conclusions in that regard. Compared to superficially similar situations documented in conflicts such as Syria or even Ukraine, it is nevertheless worth noting how orderly and restrained the conduct appears to be in this particular case. Of course, this should not be interpreted as evidence that all operations in Myanmar unfold in a similar manner, but within the limits of the footage available here, the behavior of the attackers toward those who had surrendered or were otherwise not participating in the fighting appears relatively disciplined. What you are seeing here is one of the reasons why the conflict in Myanmar has occasionally been described in Western media as a Gen Z war. In this instance, the young fighters can be seen performing what appears to be a Fortnite or TikTok-style dance to celebrate their victory. Many of the fighters have grown up in an era shaped by smartphones, video games, online culture, and social media. While similar behavior can sometimes be observed among fighters in parts of Africa, the motivations behind it are often different. In those cases, such displays may be rooted in local traditions, rituals, or cultural practices rather than being influenced by internet culture. What we are seeing here, by contrast, appears to be more closely tied to the influence of social media, online trends, and the broader digital culture with which many of these younger fighters have grown up. This has also resulted in the fact that the decades-long conflict in Myanmar, and especially the war that has been ongoing since 2021, have been relatively well documented. This is particularly true for the rebel side, whose fighters frequently publish helmet camera footage and other combat recordings on social media, especially Facebook. Yet despite this abundance of footage, the conflict often goes almost completely unnoticed in the Western world. This has led many people who report on it to refer to it as the forgotten war. With that, I have probably now managed to mention every major Western cliché associated with this conflict, from calling it the first Gen Z war to describing it as the forgotten war. Still, there is some truth behind both labels. There is definitely a lack of awareness about this war, and I have not reported on it before either. In my defense, I have to say that this was most likely due to the fact that the war in Ukraine consumed most of my attention and time, especially since I am from Germany, and therefore more directly affected by it. With this video, however, I hope to mark the beginning of at least partial coverage of the conflict to the best of my ability. I also hope that my commentary and analysis so far have been of value to you. So once again, if you enjoy what I do and would like to see and learn more about how this war is being fought, please consider leaving a like, sharing the video, and posting a comment. Doing so helps YouTube show this video to more people and encourages me to continue covering topics beyond just Ukraine. Here, the entire squad records one final selfie video to celebrate the capture of the Junta police station and share news of the operation online. According to the fighters, a squad's worth of weapons was seized during the assault.